The content of this podcast is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended as, nor should it be considered a substitute for professional medical advice. Hello, this is Karen Nickel, family nurse practitioner, and you are listening to Itchy and Bitchy, a podcast that provides answers to your many unanswered health questions. Before I get started, I want to remind you about my course called The Perimenopause Answer. If you are going through this phase of life called perimenopause, or if you're not sure if you're in perimenopause, I would love to have the opportunity to talk to you about the course to see if it is the right fit for you. I have really enjoyed getting to know many of you and am so grateful to you for listening to and for sharing the podcast. There is a link on our website, itchyandbitchy.com, and our Facebook page, I&B Podcast, where you can schedule an appointment for a Zoom call with me. This is a Zoom call with me, not a webinar, so when you make an appointment, I will be sitting at my desk waiting for you to join the one-on-one Zoom call. Since we are heading into summer, I wanted to talk about one of the things I really don't like about summer, and that is mosquitoes. First of all, mosquitoes love me. Love me. And when I get a mosquito bite, I get huge welts. My husband has always doubted my assertion that mosquitoes are highly attracted to me. Then one day when we were at a University of Tennessee football game along with 102,000 of our favorite people, I saw one mosquito flying over the crowd, coming straight toward me. It found me, landed on me. Of course, I took care of that. But at the moment, I think my husband came to believe what I already knew. I also remember that when I was about 3 years old, my family went on a camping trip near a river, and the mosquitoes were so bad, we had to have a mosquito net over us while we slept. Well, of course, I was 3. I kicked off the netting sometime during the night and awoke with mosquito bites over every inch of my body, including my eyelids. My eyes were swollen shut. I was a swollen, miserable mess. The upside is that I got some additional love and attention from my mom, which my 4 siblings were not thrilled about, but I loved every minute of it. But since then, I shiver every time I see a mosquito. Anyway, enough about my personal life-altering mosquito experiences. It has been established that there are 2 kinds of people in the world. Those who return from time in the outdoors covered with itchy mosquito bites, that would be me, and those who can spend hours in the same space and avoid getting bitten at all, that would be my husband. Studies have proven that mosquitoes are not equal opportunity feasters. So, what exactly makes some people more attractive to mosquitoes than others? Well, to help locate their prey, female mosquitoes, those are the ones who bite, female mosquitoes use their antenna and little organs near their antenna to detect carbon dioxide and odor. Science has revealed that much of the variation in mosquito preference comes down to 3 factors: our natural body odor, having a high metabolic rate that leads to emitting more carbon dioxide, and genetics. Not sure what that says about my body odor, but hey. Mosquitoes won't just ruin a cookout or leave angry red welts on your skin after getting their meal from you. These little buzzing insects might also transmit serious diseases. The risk of getting a mosquito-borne disease is continually increasing in the United States. In preparation for this episode, I have seen so many close-up, and I mean close-up, photos of different types of mosquitoes. Frightening. In this episode, I will talk to you about the diseases that can be contracted from a mosquito bite. What are the chances they will happen to you? How to treat not only the bites, but the diseases that occur or can occur from the bite. And of course, how you can prevent being bitten in the first place. Many people do not realize the magnitude of the health threat that mosquitoes represent globally. Some of the world's most deadly diseases are carried and transmitted by mosquitoes. Even though these bloodsuckers are tiny, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention calls mosquitoes the, quote, world's deadliest animal, end quote. I have to agree with that. Tropical diseases that were once considered far away from the U.S. are becoming a presence here. This year, the U.S. saw locally transmitted cases of malaria. In 2016 to 2017, a Zika outbreak occurred in Florida and Texas, and dengue has been spread locally in the U.S. every year for over a decade. I'll be sharing information about dengue later. More than half of the world's population, including people in the United States, live in hot, humid climates where there's a risk of acquiring mosquito-borne diseases. Mosquitoes love places that are hot and humid. The change in our climate has resulted in milder winters, earlier springs, longer and warmer summers, and changes in the amount of rain we get in certain areas. All are parts of a recipe for a perfect place for these vectors to live and breed. Today, I'm only going to talk about dengue fever, West Nile virus, and malaria. Zika and chikungunya are also possible viral infections that can occur with mosquito bites, but the numbers of infections from these two viruses are very, very low in the U.S. You need to be careful when you're traveling, but here in the U.S., those viruses, the frequency of those viruses is very, very low. Okay, let's start with dengue fever. The name dengue comes from the Swahili term kadinga pepo, which means a seizure caused by an evil spirit, which I think is a perfect description. Dengue is a viral fever caused by any of 4 different dengue viruses and spread through mosquito bites. It's a common disease in many tropical regions across the earth, but it has now begun to appear in more temperate climates. The mosquitoes that carry dengue fever are called Aedes aegypti. You would likely recognize them. They're black and white striped, and now are regularly found in the southern parts of the U.S. I know we see them here, but recently the insects have been found as far north as the Bay Area and Washington, D.C. One 2019 study predicted an additional 2 billion people will be at risk for dengue fever by 2080, by the year 2080. In 2023, there were over 2,500 cases of dengue in the U.S. Now, most of these were travel-related, meaning the person acquired the disease while traveling. Locally acquired dengue means that the bite causing the disease occurred here in the U.S. The locally acquired cases of dengue in 2023 occurred in Florida, where there were 168 cases, 2 cases in California, 1 case in Texas, and 933 in Puerto Rico, where it's considered endemic. Mosquitoes first acquire the virus after biting a human who's already been infected with the virus. The insect then carries and transmits the virus for the rest of its life, the little bugger. Although less common, the dengue virus can also spread from a pregnant parent to their child. Very rarely, the virus can spread through blood transfusions, breastfeeding, and organ transplants. Again, very rare. About 25% of people infected with the dengue virus will experience symptoms. So this is good news, just 25%. Just because Aedes aegypti mosquito bit you doesn't mean you'll develop dengue fever. Hallelujah. If symptoms do occur, they usually start 4 to 10 days after the bite and can last 3 to 7 days. Most common symptoms include aches and pains in the muscles, joints, or bones. It can sometimes be excruciating joint pain, which has earned it the very grim nickname of breakbone fever. You can have eye pain, typically behind the eyes, high fever of 104 degrees or above, nausea and vomiting, rash, which looks like pink or red spots or patches, severe headache, or swollen glands. About 5% of people will develop severe symptoms. Typically, 24 to 48 hours after the fever disappears, severe symptoms will develop, and it is life-threatening. This is called dengue hemorrhagic fever. Hemorrhagic means bleeding. Severe symptoms of dengue include abdominal pain and tenderness, persistent vomiting, nothing will relieve it, bleeding from the nose or gums, blood in the vomit or stool, fatigue, restlessness or irritability, rapid breathing, pale, cold skin, and weakness. Anyone with these severe symptoms should get care right away by going to the nearest emergency department. Make sure to let them know if you have been traveling in a tropical climate area prior to getting the symptoms, or if you know that you have dengue. After recovery, people who have dengue may feel tired for several weeks, unfortunately. The icky parasite that causes malaria is up next, so stay tuned after this break. You're all dying to hear the yucky details of the malaria parasite. But next up is West Nile virus. Then I'll tell you about that darn parasite. West Nile virus was given this name because in the 1950s, there were several large outbreaks in Egypt and the Nile River Delta. Mosquitoes transmit this virus by biting an infected bird and then biting a person. Remember that dengue is transmitted by a mosquito biting an infected human and then infecting another human. This particular mosquito will bite a bird or other animal and then transmit it to a human by biting the person. The first virus symptoms occur within 3 to 14 days of being bitten. This is spread by the Culex mosquito, which is a brown mosquito with sort of stripedy legs. Again, the female mosquito is the culprit. Once again, not all people who get bitten by an infected mosquito get the disease, thank goodness. Around 70 to 80% of people who are infected won't show any symptoms. Additional good news, fewer than 1% of people who get West Nile virus infections develop severe symptoms or neurologic conditions such as meningitis or encephalitis. Of those who do develop those conditions, fewer than 10% are fatal. Now that I just told you that, I should share the fact that in 2023, Colorado had a huge outbreak, way more than any other state. So the statistics from that outbreak shatters all of the typical numbers I just gave you. In 2023, Colorado had 435 confirmed cases of West Nile virus, including 262 hospitalizations and 50 deaths. So, of the confirmed cases, 60% were hospitalized and 11% were fatal. These large numbers were likely due to the fact that Colorado had a very wet spring and summer in 2023, and typically the residents there love spending time outdoors. So prevention measures are so important when you are traveling to or living in places that have high outbreak numbers. The key symptoms of West Nile virus include headache, fever, diarrhea, muscle weakness, tingling or numbness, neck stiffness, flu-like symptoms, or a rash on your chest, stomach, or back. When a case of West Nile virus becomes severe, people can suffer from dangerous problems like encephalitis, which is an inflammation of the brain, and meningitis, which is swelling in the lining of the brain and the spinal cord. The neurologic symptoms people may experience when the illness is severe is clumsiness, problems walking, brain fog or cognitive problems, memory issues. People sometimes will start acting strange. Their brain doesn't seem to be working right. They may have trouble word finding. They might be a little slower or will have some weakness develop. Also, walking could be really challenging for those people. Just a bunch of neurologic symptoms. In those with a mild case, symptoms of West Nile virus usually fully resolve in a few weeks. Sometimes fatigue and muscle weakness can linger for months. After a nervous system infection, like if you've had a severe infection, you may have long-lasting or permanent memory loss, hearing loss, balance or gait issues, and other neurological conditions. So it's a serious thing. Severe infections can be very, very serious. Moving on to malaria. This is a very harmful and widespread disease. Malaria is not a virus like dengue or West Nile. It is a parasite. The female Anopheles mosquitoes, which is your regular brown mosquito, transmit the disease. The process by which this mosquito can infect you is sort of disgusting. An infected mosquito carries the Plasmodium parasite. When the mosquito bites you, the parasite is released into your bloodstream. Once the parasites are inside your body, they travel to the liver, where they sit and mature for a few days. Then the mature parasites enter the bloodstream and begin to infect the red blood cells. Within 48 to 72 hours, the parasites inside the red blood cells multiply, causing the infected cells to burst open. Ugh. The parasites continue to infect red blood cells, resulting in symptoms that occur in cycles that last 2 to 3 days at a time. It causes symptoms like fever, headache, and chills that start 10 to 15 days after being bitten, and some types of malaria can be fatal. More than 247 million cases of malaria are diagnosed every year. Malaria is typically found in tropical and subtropical climates where the parasites thrive. In the United States, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, report 2,000 to 2,500 cases of malaria annually, most of them acquired through travel. However, we are seeing more locally acquired cases in the U.S. Remember, locally acquired means that you've actually contracted the disease in the United States. In 2023, we had 9 locally acquired cases. 7 were recorded in Florida and 1 each in Texas and Maryland. Malaria can cause life-threatening complications, and the following may occur. Swelling of the blood vessels of the brain, or cerebral malaria it's called. An accumulation of fluid in the lungs that causes breathing problems, which is called pulmonary edema. Kidney, liver, or spleen organ failure. Anemia due to the destruction of the red blood cells that happens. Low blood sugar can also happen. So how are these diseases tested and treated? Well, both dengue and West Nile viruses can be tested through a blood sample. There are 2 types of tests that can be done. Antibody tests check your blood for antibodies against the virus that your body has made, which would show that the virus has been present in your body. Because your body needs time to make those antibodies, it is best to have this test done 4 or more days after your symptoms begin to make sure that the test can measure the antibody's presence. If you do it too early, you might get a false negative test. The second type of blood test is a molecular test that checks your blood to see if there's any genetic material from the dengue or West Nile virus in your blood. This type of test should be administered within the first week your symptoms begin. Because of possible neurological complications, additional testing may be needed if someone has the West Nile virus. If symptoms are severe and brain-related, a lumbar puncture may be ordered. Also known as a spinal tap, this test involves inserting a needle into your spine to extract fluid to look for the virus in the fluid. West Nile virus can elevate the white blood cell count in the fluid, which indicates an infection. So a blood test called a CBC, complete blood count, may be ordered. MRI and other imaging scans of the head can also help detect inflammation and brain swelling. There are 2 types of tests for malaria. One is called a rapid diagnostic test that detects specific proteins in the blood that are produced by malaria parasites. So this is just a simple blood test. The other test is called a blood smear. For this test, a drop of blood is put on a special slide, and a laboratory professional who does this all the time will examine the slide under a microscope to look for the parasites. This type of test can also identify the different types of malaria parasites. Unfortunately, we do not have any antiviral medications to treat dengue or West Nile viruses. Therefore, like many other viruses, the focus is on supportive care with the goal of relieving symptoms and preventing complications. Most people will feel better and get better at home in 1 to 2 weeks with rest and hydration, drinking plenty of fluids, and Tylenol or acetaminophen. Tylenol can help reduce your fever and any pain. Specifically with dengue fever, you should not take aspirin or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs known as NSAIDs, such as Advil, which is ibuprofen, or Aleve, which is naproxen. These can increase your risk of dengue-associated bleeding. However, with West Nile virus, since the virus does not cause bleeding, you can take over-the-counter pain relievers such as ibuprofen or aspirin to relieve the symptoms of West Nile virus, such as muscle aches and headaches. If you are diagnosed with one of these viruses, just make sure your provider gives you information on what you can and cannot take in terms of over-the-counter symptom relief meds. If you have West Nile virus and you experience brain swelling or other severe symptoms, you may be given intravenous fluids and medications to lower the risk of infections. Research is currently being done on interferon therapy for West Nile virus. Other potential treatments being researched for West Nile-related encephalitis include using IV polyclonal immunoglobulins, using recombinant humanized monoclonal antibodies, which is also given by IV. And this type of antibody infusion has been used for COVID-19 infections. Some of you may have received monoclonal antibodies with a severe COVID infection. Corticosteroids like prednisone can also be used. Treatment for malaria is typically provided in a hospital where medications are prescribed based on the type of malaria parasite that is present. Sometimes the medication prescribed may not clear the infection because the parasite is resistant to the drugs that are being used. If this happens, more than one medication or a change in medications altogether may be needed to treat the disease. Also, some types of malaria parasites live in the liver for an extended period of time and can reactivate at a later date, causing a relapse of the infection. If this happens, a second medication will be given to prevent a future relapse. We do have prescription anti-malarial drugs to take to help prevent the disease if you are traveling to areas that have high risk for malaria infection. There are 6 different prescription antimalarials available, and your provider will likely choose the drug that's recommended for the area where you're traveling. I know this has been a super cheery episode and super cheery information. But as we move into the summer months, I want all of you to be aware of the potential for serious problems that can be caused by that darn pesky, teeny tiny mosquito. On the next episode, I will talk about disease protection through use of vaccines and how to avoid being bitten by one of those bloodsuckers in the first place. So make sure to tune in 2 weeks. Thank you for listening and for sharing the podcast with others. If you listen using Apple Podcast app, please leave a review and rate the podcast. Your reviews and ratings matter. I encourage you to visit our Facebook page, IMB Podcast, where you can leave comments or questions for me. Our website is itchyandbitchy.com, where there are blogs with some of our subjects available for you to read. On the Facebook page and website, we have information about how to schedule an appointment with me, not a webinar, so we can chat about how my perimenopausal course can help you if you are going through this phase in life. As always, thanks to Forrest Wenzel, our producer and our composer of our theme music, and the person who does all the behind-the-scenes work to make this podcast possible. Thank you, Forrest. Check out his album called An Awful Lot. Go to wherever you stream your favorite music to listen, and if you do not know how or where to stream music, you can find the album on Apple Music or Spotify. Remember that your health is in your hands.
Itchy, itchy.